I can't believe this is real, but like 30 years ago, almost this exact same day, you and I are recording on a Wednesday. That's unusual for us as folks are listening to this. 30 years ago, yesterday, you guys did your first Nitro from right here in Huntsville, Alabama at the Von Braun Civic Center. There were about 7,000 folks in attendance. Only 2,100 of those were paid. So it's a pretty small gate of 18,000. But in this era of trying to compete with the juggernaut, the number one wrestling show of all time, Monday Night Raw, the optics are pretty important. So I know that sounds bad, 2,100 paid, 7,000 in attendance, but looking big and being live, that was important for Nitro, wasn't it?
Absolutely. That was the reason why I went to the Mall of America for the very first episode, because we had zero confidence that we would be able to put a significant enough number of people in a venue to make it look good on television. And there's a psychology to that. It should be kind of easy to figure out, but most people don't think about it, right? From a television producer's perspective. But if you're sitting at home and you decide to watch something, some live sports, live action, live whatever, and you tune in and you see that the crowd, there's kind of a crowd there and they're not very excited and they're not very animated, and the action that could be going on in the ring could be just perfectly fine, but the audience just isn't with it for whatever reason. And when it's a small audience, you got to turn down the lights. When you turn down the lights, so you're not drawing attention to the fact that you've got a bunch of empty seats, it takes away from the pop inside of the ring. Colors aren't quite as bright. It doesn't look quite as vibrant. It has a dingy, dark kind of feel that as a viewer, you're not going to really notice it. But what you're also not going to notice is energy. And while you're sitting at home watching a bunch of people who are they're there, their asses are in the seats and they're not having a good time, you don't feel that energy. You don't see that energy. What do you think is going on subconsciously in the viewer's mind? And no reason really to watch this. Boom, you're gone, right? So you have to have enough energy in the venue to translate to the viewer at home. If you're live action sports, you have to. It's mandatory. Elvis Presley said it. The most important part of any one of his shows was the audience. And the point I'm making is very similar in that respect. And since we couldn't draw an audience, particularly in places like Huntsville, you know why? Even though, Nitro was fairly, had a buzz on it, wasn't really the hot show yet. But the reason we couldn't draw in Huntsville is because WCW absolutely destroyed that market with paper. They've been paper houses for so long in the Southeast. There wasn't a market that we couldn't go to where we hadn't conditioned the fans in that market to the fact that you just don't have to buy a ticket to WCW. They're going to go on sale and you can go buy one, or you can wait for about 5 days before the show and then you can go get one for free with a hamburger anywhere in town. And when you've spent years, as WCW did before I took over, everything was paper because they produced all of their television was produced in places like the Von Braun Center and all over the Southeast, where you had those absolutely perfect venues, 5,000 to 10,000 seat venues, big enough to look good on television, but not so big that, it seemed like you were putting on a wrestling event in a cave. But every one of those great buildings we had burned to the ground by papering the houses for television. So to all of a sudden get the market to go, I'm going to drop $40 for a ticket. We weren't there yet, which is why there was so much paper.
Let's talk about that episode of Nitro. We start with the Macho Man's music. He's going to come to the ring and wrestle Kurasawa. This is a New Japan relationship. Kurasawa actually wound up having about 40 matches with different WCW competitors, but he did spend a good amount of time here between 95 and 96 in WCW. We would see some other talent featured more prominently. Was this a quote unquote excursion for Kurasawa? Was it supposed to be a short-term thing, or why didn't he become a long-term player for WCW?
Well, there were a lot of reasons. think the primary reason that New Japan wanted Kurasawa to come over is because they wanted him to become familiar with the American style wrestling. He'd been in the dojo, he'd been part of New Japan, but he was young, didn't have a lot of international experience. And Masasa Ito felt that it was a good thing for him to come over to the United States for a short period of time to train, to compete, and just to begin to get exposure to the American system or the WCW system at that time. It was never intended to be a long-term deal. A lot of times, visa restrictions were the primary reason that a lot of guys couldn't come over and stay for lengths of time. And in other cases, it was just, they had families in Japan and they couldn't just disappear for 6 months and leave their families behind. So between the visa situation and just, real life, it was very difficult for guys to come over and spend any length of time consistently.
Hey everybody, so by now you've heard me bragging about saving people money at savewithconrad.com for years, but I thought, you know what, don't take my word for it. Let's ask someone who really did save with Conrad. Let's welcome in Tyrus. Tyrus, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm good, Conrad. How about yourself?
Man, I'm delighted to talk to you. I got to ask, what made you come to Save with Conrad originally?
Well, first, I'm a return shopper, if you will. I was listening to the podcast years ago now with you and Bruce, and I just figured we were in the mode for a refinance, and I heard you guys save money, so I called you guys, got hooked up with Jimmy way back then, and that's really how the ball started to roll.
So initially you were interested in lowering your monthly payments, or did you want to knock out some credit card debt, or what was your goal the first time you went to savewithconrad.com?
It was mostly just to get the lower rate, but there's a little bit of credit card debt in there too, so we rolled that all up.
And you got a cheaper monthly payment on the other side of that?
Yeah, yep. And with this time that I used, it saved me quite a bit a month. Yeah.
So let's talk about what brought you back to Save with Conrad. First of all, thank you for using us not once, but twice. I appreciate that. But that was your needs back then. When was that? Was that 2020 that you did that before?
Yeah, it was around that, maybe 2019, somewhere around that.
Okay. So now a few years later, your needs have changed. What prompted you to go to savewithconrad.com this time?
Well, we were looking to refinance once again because we bought during the high rate time. And we had, a little bit of credit card debt, and we thought, why not hit that refinance button? And originally, we were thinking, why not just go through the national brand that was servicing our loan? I called one of them over there, and he crunched the numbers, and he said, no can do. Sorry. And then I thought, I'll just stay with Conrad again. And I called, and the delightful Frances answered, and you know her.
Oh, yeah.
And the first thing after I told her what the national brand said, she just said, are they stupid? We can save you money. And she got the ball rolling. I worked with the OG Larry and saving $425 a month.
All right. I love to hear that, man. $425 a month. I love that, dude. Congratulations.
Yeah, thank you.
If you had someone who was on the fence, because I know that there's a lot of people who just know me as the wrestling podcaster, but if you had someone who listens to my pods and they're on the fence about whether or not this is a real service and can he really do this? I mean, what would you say to that?
Absolutely do it. It worked for me multiple times, from Jimmy way back when to Francis and Larry. It just, the whole team, they just had nothing but great things to say. They're easy to work with. They worked well with the inspectors and everything like that. It's just a great experience, and I would recommend it to anybody.
Well, I'm glad that we were able to help save you some money, and I would be delighted if we could help save you and your family some money. Do what Tyrus did. Go right now to savewithconrad.com. You can talk to a live person, get a quick quote, or just drop us an email directly at conrad@savewithconrad.com. And of course, we can still do it the old school way. Give us a call toll free at 888-425-0105. Thanks for all the time today, Tyrus. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Conrad.
Lesson number 2129, Equal Housing Lender. SaveWithConrad.com.